One.
All right, here we are back, committee, and we are looking at the issue of temporary workers. And I'm looking for my folder, but we heard last time that there are very few temporary workers that have worked over the 1280. There were 31. No, yes, there were 31 that worked over 1280. Correct me if I'm getting this right, Dan. 31 that worked over 1280s. 20 of them were related to COVID duties that had to be done. 5 of them were assigned to PSAPs to fill roles there. And 2 of those 5 want to work on a limited basis. And 1 was in the EOC. Do I have that right? You're muted.
Of course I am. For the record, Dan Pouliot, Department of Human Resources Deputy Commissioner, and that is 90% correct, Madam Chair. But the Department of Public Safety numbers, the 5 that were Department of Public Safety, 2 of those are in the PSAP, 911 callers. 3 of them are working in the SEOC.
Okay. And then there were some seasonal workers. 10 worked over the 7-month time, and only 3 met the 2-year period of being over the amount, and 2 were PSAPs, retired, and they filled in temp. They weren't subject to mandatory overtime, so they liked that. And 1 was a retired private medical practitioner who works for Dale.
That is all correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was getting this right, because the way I looked at this, we didn't have a huge temp problem in the executive branch. Is that the understanding that other people got also?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. And can I get VSEA? Is that the way you understood that also?
Could you restate the question, Madam Chair?
The question was, given the numbers that we were given last week and that we just repeated now, it seems that we do not have a big problem with temps in the executive, going over the 1280 in the executive department. Is that your understanding?
Yes, we give a great deal of credit to the Department of Human Resources for grappling this issue and trying to deal with it effectively. And in large part, it's thanks to the committee taking up this issue over the past several years. However, there are still individuals who fall through the cracks. And there is, of course, the judicial branch of government that continues to be what we consider problematic with the use of temps.
Okay, so I think that what we'll hear, we have Patricia Gable with us today. So I think we'll hear, does anybody have any questions about that kind of section of it? Yes, Senator Clarkson?
So at its height, when the VSEA identified this as a real problem, and remind us at the height of the problem, how many temporary workers were there that were working over the 1280?
I do not have that committed to memory. I would defer to HR, since I think they've tracked it fairly closely over the last several years.
I mean, and we've been addressing this as an issue for the last few years.
I know, but I just would love to get the scale of the improvement so that we can paint a bit, so that we can appreciate the difference.
Yep. Do you have that, Dan, or can you get that?
I do. In the year 2016 calendar year, and these are all calendar year numbers, I don't have an exact number then, I wasn't here, but that number was well north of 100. That went over the 1280. And in the ensuing years, 2017 we brought it down to 75, 2018 down to 46. In 2019, there were 32, 11 of which were seasonals. So when the seasonals got separated from the rest of the temporary employees, that's when we went to the 7-month limit on seasonals. So that left in 2019 just 21 people who had gone over the limit of 1280. This year we bumped up a little bit up to 31, and again that is largely related to the COVID-19 response efforts.
But big improvement over 100 though.
North of more than 100.
Well, right.
Senator Polina, I see you have your hand up.
It's sort of an obvious question in a way, like, how did we do that? How did you reduce the number of temps so dramatically? I mean, if it was so easy to get rid of them or change them, why have them in the first place?
So respectfully, Senator Polina, I'm going to say it wasn't that easy. And I would point to the efforts of Amy Pope, who's in the meeting here today. She's the director of classification and position management. Yep. She and her team have done an outstanding job of producing monthly reports to the appointing authorities across the executive branch, highlighting to them those folks who are working at rates that would get them over 1,280 by the end of the year. So we start sending them those reports in March or April. And in conjunction with that, I send out a statewide message to the appointing authorities, reminding them of their statutory requirement to keep temps under 1280, and that there's a 3 VSA 331 that regulates that in statute. And I follow that up with another email to them a little later in the year, April, May, to remind them again. So I think between those two things, between the reminders that I send and more importantly, the monthly data that gets distributed to the appointing authorities, that's highlighted the need for folks to pay attention to it, which I don't think was happening quite as robustly in years prior. I will also point out that as a result of the stipulated agreement with the VSEA following the unfair labor practice in 2016, when we settled that, one of the things we do is we also send that same information, that same list of people and the hours that they're working to the VSEA once a month. I think it's a joint effort, and I do, I'll thank Mr. Aluzzi for pointing out that DHR has done a good job, but this is in conjunction with the VSEA, and I think we've done a great job as a team to make.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. So let's jump then to the question of temps in the judiciary, and then the other outstanding issue here, I think, around temporary workers is whether or not, how much and whether or not they should be getting some form of benefits, even those who work under the 1280, if they're in more or less permanent jobs. So Patricia, would you like to talk to us about temps? I know we've had this conversation before, but here we are again.
Yes, here we are. So I provided a report to the committees as the legislature requested. And in 2020, we had 3 temporary employees that, and I have to minimize my screen so I can look at my report. Just 1 minute. 3 temporary employees who 2 of them were in support of our NGCMS project. As you know, that's been a multi-year project. And 1 of them was identified for peak or increased workload.
What was the 2 were in the electronic project?
Yeah.
And the 1?
Yes, and so 1 is a GIL coordinator.
Do you want to say what GIL is, just to,
Oh, I'm sorry, the guardians ad litem. So we have guardians ad litem who are volunteers, but we have GAL coordinators who help manage the program.
okay, so two of them were there and then one was where?
No, that's one GAL
One.
coordinator, and then two are the docket clerks who are hired as backstops for the NGCMS project. And those were our temporaries in 2020. Over, the amount that you requested.
So you only had three in
That's correct.
2020?
Yep.
Okay. So it seems like you've also addressed the issue.
Yes, we believe we have, although our infrastructure for doing this is not the same as the executive branch, we've made a determined effort to make sure that temporary employees are used for the flexibility, the reasons, one would normally hire such employees. And it's very frustrating, I think, for the people who work in the court system that that's the case. For example, we've been asking the legislature for 4 or 5 years now for additional permanent positions for security officers. And we haven't gotten those yet. And so when that happens, we really don't have a choice. I think most people who are familiar with the judiciary know that we're really under-resourced for the current responsibilities that we have. And we need to be nimble and creative and flexible as we try and get our work done. We continue to request additional positions from the appropriations committees, and we'll be delighted if we get some. But in the meantime, we're trying to manage, within the guidelines that have been identified.
Senator Clarkson.
Thank you, Pat. We all know, we all know, I know you're under-resourced. Would you be kind enough just to share in an ideal world what you're fully staffed? I mean, you've given us a notion with the security officers that you'd want more of those, but can you give us numbers of across judiciary, how many positions you would want?
I could do that. I couldn't do it right now, but what?
No,
yeah,
it would be great if you'd get that to us. That would be great.
Yeah, no, we
one
would be
thing to
give
say.
that to you. Yeah, and I would say this is kind of an exciting time for us in the judiciary, not just in a bad way. Meaning, notwithstanding the pandemic and our efforts to restart jury trials, technology has enabled us to experiment with new ways to hear cases and manage cases and deliver access to justice. And we're in the process now of trying to learn in this new world with this new technology, how does that change the way the people who work for us do their work? And so what we could do is maybe put together a world where we're, resourced to support the judiciary as it is becoming in real time. So I'd be happy to do that.
Thanks, because I think we can be better. We're good advocates for the areas in government that we feel are under-resourced, and we've certainly gone to bat for some very specific areas that have needed more resources. And Unleash Us is, I guess, one of my. And you've got a double impact with the chair of GovOps here and a member of the judiciary.
Yes,
well,
I
think
agree.
I think they have a triple whammy, because 3 members of judiciary are also on appropriations.
True, but it hasn't resulted in their being fully resourced, has it?
I don't think anybody in the state is fully resourced, no matter how many people are on appropriations. But
that's fair. That's fair. But
we appreciate collaborative approaches where we know we can't create a perfect world, but if we can have a better understanding of the challenges when we come to decisions, I think it's better for all of us. So we're welcoming your offer, and we'll take it up.
So I guess I should let VSEA, do you want to respond to that? Because I know that there were real concerns with judiciary before, and we seem to be hearing now that they also have gone a long way to solving this issue.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm not in a position to respond with the current information until I chat with our representatives from the Judiciary Unit. So I'd like an opportunity to respond at a later time. I've already sent an email to the chair of the unit who works at the Costello Courthouse in Burlington, and I hope it's confirmed. And if not, I'll let the committee know. But at this point, I don't have numbers or statistics available to report to the committee.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you. So committee, do we want to talk at all about what benefits are available to part-time people, and should there be benefits available to part-time people, and how do we determine that? Is that a conversation that the committee would like to have? Keisha, is that a yes?
It is a yes. And is this conversation in the context of possibly influencing the budget process? Because I imagine if they don't receive certain benefits, it would be a huge expense. So is it kind of a timely conversation to advance something in the budget potentially?
It could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way.
Senator.
No, I guess I'd like to appreciate what benefits they get currently before we enter into the concept of, I mean, do they get no benefits like we get no benefits, or do they get more than that?
Well, that's part of the conversation that we had. I just
Right.
wanted to know if people wanted to have the conversation.
I think we should be clear on it.
Okay, so with that, what I'll do is Dan still with us? Do you know what? Yes, he is.
I am.
And you have your little yellow hand up.
Yes.
Sometimes I see them and sometimes I don't.
Right.
So-
So similar to last week, I've had some connectivity problems in the last 10 minutes. So I went to my mobile phone,
Oh.
which doesn't allow me to do video for some reason. In any event, I did send to the committee last night, I think. Might have been this morning, but I think it was last night. A fairly simple spreadsheet that lays out the estimates for what benefits might cost should the benefits that classified employees get today be extended to the 810 temporary employees. Now, we didn't include seasonals because that wasn't discussed last week. But the question last week was, what would it cost for the 810 individuals who don't go over 1,280 hours, but are working, and what would it cost to provide them with benefits? So my good friend and your colleague and my colleague, Harold Schwartz, put together a fairly simple spreadsheet that lays out the potential costs. And I'll start by saying what they do get today, and we didn't mention it last week, but today, per statute, temporaries can earn up to 40 hours of sick leave in a year. And that was as a result of a statute enacted, I believe, not last session, but the session before.
And this is on our website now. It's under today's date. Gail has it posted.
Okay, I don't have access to it today because I have only my laptop. I mean, only my iPad today, but I will look at it. So when you did it, did you do it on a prorated basis so that, like, if you're working 25 hours a week, you would pay 3/5?
Right. So here's what we did. We assumed the 810 people were all working 20 hours a week,
Okay.
right? Half time, essentially. Because I mean, it would take a lot of work to figure out what each individual temporary employee might accrue, on a prorated basis. So we took we essentially did a ballpark for you, which at least gives us a starting point. So we include their annual pay in there. Of course, that's a non-issue because that's already accounted for. But what happens is any employee, be they part-time, full-time, as soon as they hit 1,040 hours, which is half-time, 20 hours a week, they are eligible per statute for full health insurance, full dental insurance. Okay, so even though we say it's prorated for health and dental, the cost would be the same for each of those. The cost to the state would be the same for all of those employees as if they were full-time employees.
So
that's
can you just clarify that, Dan? Did you say that all full-time, half-time employees get full health and dental benefits?
The way I would say it is that as soon as an employee hits 20 hours or more average per week, if they're benefits eligible, they're eligible for full coverage, which is full cost to the state. Even though they're only working 20 hours a week, they get covered full health insurance, full dental insurance.
But they wouldn't necessarily pay the full employee contribution.
They wouldn't. We would.
Yeah, we would, but they would pay a portion, a
Right.
prorated portion of the employee contribution. Is that the way it would work?
Right.
Yeah. But we would have to pay the full.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and so those are the two big items. Of course, health insurance is 16 for assuming it's a two-person select care, which is kind of the norm. That's $16,681 per year per person per member, and dental
Right.
insurance is $744. So those are the big items.
Mhm.
Life insurance, the cost of EAP are relatively minor. The retirement contribution, and this is based on the 20 hours per week, the retirement contribution for the state would be $4,450 per employee. And FICA would be $1,591. And those are, of course, based on the hours worked, both those things.
Mhm.
Add annual leave to that at 48 hours of annual leave for a half-time employee, 20 hours a week. And the total cost of benefits would be just north of $20 million for those 810 people.
Okay.
Now, again, if we wanted to go into a much more granular look at this, we'd have to do it kind of employee by employee.
How many temporary employee, I guess they're part-time employees. They're not necessarily temporary employees. They're part-time employees.
Hey,
If you're a part-time temporary, you probably wouldn't sign up for this. But if you're a part-time permanent, it might be attractive. How do we know of how many? So we're basing this on 810 temporary employees, but
Right.
do we have a category of part-time permanent?
Part-time classified, we do. I don't have that number in front of me, and I don't know whether Amy Pope, who's in the meeting, has that either.
Amy, is that something you have?
Hold on. Yep, this is Amy Pope, the Deputy Director for Classification and Position Management. I have a giant spreadsheet of all executive branch employees right now, and I'm just trying to quickly see if I can find that for you.
so while you're doing that, Amy, because what we're looking for is full halftime people, I guess, versus 10 people. So what's the 810 number? I guess I'm a little puzzled by that.
That's temporary employees.
That's the total temporary employees currently. I thought we had 31.
No, there's 841 temporary employees. 31 of them went over the
Oh, right,
1280.
31 went over, right. So there are 821 at the moment?
841.
841.
841.
And so, and I just want to remind you that that's exclusive of the seasonal temporary employees.
Right.
Right.
which we treat differently. There are just north of 500 of those this past year.
Thanks.
So, yeah, I'd be interested in if we have part-time permanent, and those part-time permanent probably are more interested in
Right.
benefits. Do we know how many there are of those, Amy?
So for classified part-time permanents, I believe that they do get these benefits. And I'm looking at it like 42 that we have that are basically working 20 hours a week or less in the executive branch.
And they're part-time permanent.
Yes, I will, once I get off of this meeting, I'll make sure that that number is correct.
And they get benefits.
They are classified employees. Yep. There's a couple that are actually exempt as I'm looking at that. There's 4 that are exempt employees. So the classified's about 38.
Senator Collmore?
That was my question. Senator Polini anticipated it. So the 38 already get benefits.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I guess the question is, of these 810 temporary employees, how temporary are they? Are they temporary for a year? Are they temporary for 10 years or under the 1280? Do we know that?
I don't have in my fingertips, Madam Chair, the tenure of each of those employees. So I can't honestly answer that. That would take some research to try to find that out, I think.
So can I ask VSEA if you had suggestions for solving this issue of temporary benefits for temporary employees?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first say that I did hear back from our unit chair, and she noted, just for information of the committee, Judiciary just terminated a temporary court officer because he was approaching his 2-year anniversary. Judiciary then put out a job posting for, quote, long-term, close quote, temporary court officer full-time. The clerks there, one of the clerks was told the temp who was terminated could not apply for the new posting. And so that's something which VSCA will follow up on. But the issue we have, as you may recall from testimony last year, is that a lot of the temps that work come into work because they need a paycheck and they cannot afford to lose income. Now, before COVID-19, coming into work when you're sick meant other people would end up with the flu or a cold or some other ailment that was not deadly as COVID-19. Of course, those concerns are multiplied by 1,000 in our current pandemic situation. So our goal has been to make the workplace more productive, reduce the reliance on sick leave, reduce the reliance on medical benefits, which are all, of course, paid for in large part by the general fund. So our goal is to come up with something which is, and we don't even represent the temps, which I think is something of note, but we have always felt that the temporary workers should be afforded some basic, what I'll call human rights, so that they can live their life, make a living, and not do so in a way that puts others at risk, because they themselves have to put themselves at risk in order to maintain a paycheck. The only other point I'd make is with regard to the judiciary. Again, due to the vigilance of your committee and the House committee, it has required the judiciary to pay close attention to the use of temporary workers. And to avoid the need to continue to come back to this year after year, it kind of makes the point that we should enact into law our legislation or a close version thereof, so that we can avoid the need to take up everyone's time on an annual or biannual basis to address these underlying issues. Again, we don't have a number for the judiciary, but if those numbers are validated by our team, we give credit to judiciary. But on the other hand, we think it's a bit draconian to terminate somebody because they have done a good job and they're being terminated simply because the judiciary doesn't want to pay them benefits. We think that's a fairly draconian response to how you manage temporary workers. We think our solution is they automatically get converted after a 2-year period and become classified employees. It's difficult enough to find qualified employees in our day and age. And here's someone who apparently did a good job because he was employed during that entire 2-year period, but was terminated for the sole reason that he was approaching his 2-year anniversary. I think that's all I can offer at this time.
So I might have misunderstood that, but I thought that the person was terminated and the position was turned into a full-time permanent position.
No, I'm reading, here's the email, I'm quoting here. Quote, they just terminated one temporary court officer because he was approaching his 2-year anniversary period.
Mhm.
Then they put out a job posting for a quote, long-term, close quote, temporary court officer, comma, full-time, period.
Temporary, full-time. Okay.
May I respond to that? Madam
Yeah,
Chair?
please do. And I will say that in about 4 minutes, I have to leave here because I have to make a really crucial call before somebody leaves at 4, but Senator Polina will take over. But please do, Pat.
Yeah, so I have no way to comment on that anecdote. I have no idea what the story is there, but I can say that we've, as I'll say again, we've consistently requested of the legislature that they appropriate additional positions to us, including very specifically for security officers. The legislature has chosen not to do that.
Mhm.
And the judiciary is already undersecured based on 2 National Center reports that have been done. And so we need the flexibility to be able to run the court system. And if the legislature doesn't choose to appropriate permanent positions to us, then it's vital that we be able to continue to utilize temporary positions. And when there's a grant fund to support it, a limited service position. So that's why I look forward to working in collaboration with your committee to make sure that we don't lose flexibility that's necessary to meet our constitutional requirements, but at the same time, to be more appropriately resourced for the demands that we have.
Mhm. Yes, I think this is I think it's a very complicated issue. I don't think it's as straightforward as it might seem on its face, but I am going to leave because I have to make this call before 4 o'clock when somebody leaves her position, and this is a crucial thing. So Anthony, if you could take over and we will come back to this conversation again at another point. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, it is obviously complicated, and I think part of what we're talking about is maybe letting the legislature know that they have to do one or the other. They have to provide the benefits or provide the needed staff that judiciary needs. I was curious though, and I honestly don't think that we should carry on this conversation much longer, because I think there's a lot of numbers floating around. And I think it would make more sense to come back with something that I didn't see what was emailed out earlier. I think it would make sense to come back another day with sort of a fresh set of figures so we can actually compare apples to apples, as opposed to what we're doing right now, which is trying to assimilate a lot of information, a lot of different numbers. But I wanted to ask Vince, just because I think you said you had a piece of legislation. And I know we've had this conversation for years, but I'm trying to remember whether we actually floated a piece of legislation or not. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, there's legislation which we asked Senator White to introduce on our behalf. We sent her a draft, and I don't, it's probably in the Ledge Council hopper. I can
Okay.
send the committee members a copy of our draft, but, often Ledge Council tweaks it and changes it, and,
Sure.
it would be with the admonition that it's our draft, not vetted by Ledge Council or signed off on by the chair of the committee.
Sure, it would be your suggestion.
Right, it's our it's our concept. Of course, any bill is introduced is always modified, amended, changed, so on and so forth. But it addresses our issue about the 1280. It addresses our issue to try to get some basic benefits to the temporary workers so that they have a good life and don't cause unnecessary, unintended consequences for their colleagues in the workplace.
Are there any other comments or questions? Because otherwise, I mean, like I said, I don't think it makes much sense to continue the conversation until we have more real and hard information, if that makes sense to others. So maybe what we could do is schedule another meeting where we can, I'm sorry, Senator Clarkson?
Yeah, I think we have some good, Dan gave us a good start. I think you're right. We just need more and then we can continue this. But I think this is setting us up for a good conversation on this.
Right, and maybe we'd have the opportunity then to look at the draft bill language as well.
Exactly. And who was and schedule whoever drafted it to go through it with us.
Right. Well,
I would think it's Dan.
Damien.
Damien, yes.
Yeah, because actually Damien should have been here for this conversation as well.
I am here. So
He is?
you are here.
I think he's here.
yeah,
quiet
I'm
as a
here. I'm
mouse.
just sitting here quietly
Just
off
doing some
screen.
work, huh?
So I just have to say it hasn't made it through the process to me yet, the drafting request. So sometimes these things get held up before they make it to the attorney. But if I'm given something, I'm happy to draft it up for the committee, or if you want to first take a look at the VSEA proposal and then just tell me what the committee wants drafted, I can also work that way. So I checked my records this morning when Vince sent an email just asking Gail whether she knew where the legislation was, and it hasn't made it to me yet. So it may be hung up in the assignment system at this point.
Okay. I think it would make more sense to just take a look at what Vince's language, as opposed to us submitting a bill request at this point, given the fact that the chair is not here.
Right.
I
Just
think
so you know,
she'd want to be in on that conversation.
so Mr. Vice Chair, the only point I can make is we simply forwarded the link from the bill as introduced in 2020, H334. And what I'll do is I'll just forward that at this moment to Damien with a copy to the rest of the committee. Jeanette may have thought, I can't remember if we got more than one person to co-sponsor it. So maybe she thought somebody else agreed to sponsor it with her and the other person thought she was going to file it. We'll get that straightened out pretty quickly. But the concept is the same as it has been over the last legislative sessions.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I was the drafter of that bill last year, so I can even speak to the provisions in it. I'm just double checking right now. I was the drafter of that. So whenever the committee wants to take that up, I can speak to last year's bill just as easily as I could to something new that was drafted.
Sounds good. So let's do that, and then we'll come back again and talk about some of the numbers and maybe go through the language of the draft bill to start to put things into context a little bit, because I think this has been good, but there's a lot of things swirling around this. It's more complicated than as always, it's more complicated than we thought when we first set up the meeting. So,
Mr. Vice Chair.
yes,
Hi,
Ms.
this is
Treasurer.
Yeah,
Madam Treasurer.
Beth Pierce, well, hey, Beth works for me just fine. I'm having a hard time backing into the 4,450 per employee number that HR had. I'm just doing a really rough. But if I take the average pay according to the HR reports is 18.65. I multiply that times 20 hours times 52, and roughly, I don't have the exact number in front of me, it's 0.14% of salary. So that gets me, way less than 44.50. So I think I'd like to be able to look at the numbers as they relate to retirement. And I think it would also be helpful to understand how many people we're talking about, what the universe is, because it's not 821, because some of those folks aren't essentially permanent part-time. They're not coming back year after year. And I think it would be helpful to have some sense of what the universe we're talking about in looking at this, because I'm having trouble backing into the number, and I may be wrong because I'm doing this on my phone calculator. And again, I don't know what the universe is of people that would be potentially eligible. I would say for the record that I believe that retirement, everybody should have a right to retirement, and everyone should have a right to financial well-being in retirement, including legislators, by the way. We'll have to talk about that sometime. But
Yeah, really.
I talk about it all the time.
I noticed that, Senator. But I think that having a sense of what is the universe we're talking about, and then taking a look at those cost numbers. And again, I may be wrong, but that was a quick on the calculator. So I think that would be helpful to have.
So Beth, what would it take for you to be able to do that before we meet next time?
Well, I would need to have the universe. So I guess the number of people that have multiple years of service as a temp, on 2/2, if I got the right date, Vince Aluzzi referenced a person who's been a part-time temp for 22 years in a row. Okay,
Right.
Clearly that person is someone that you might take a look at. You'd have to eliminate retirees because retirees come back as temps. And so you'd have to eliminate people that are in the retirement system already getting a benefit. And then you'd have to look and say, how many people are we talking about that are back year to year? And I'm not sure how HR might approach that, but Harold's a pretty bright guy. I think he can figure that out. So that gets you to the universe, and then we can take a look at that. Because if you just multiply it times 821 or whatever number you're talking about, I don't think that works as a reasonable cost estimate. And again, I'm just, if someone wants to do the math, 18.65 times 52 weeks by 20 hours times 0.14, that's a lot less than 44.50, at least on my calculator. But I tend to hit the digits a little fat-fingered on the phone. But if someone wants to do that, I think it's less than that. And again, the universe is going to be smaller. So I think we should have both numbers as we're looking at this. And I can only deal with the retirement number. It's possible that Harold used the healthcare plus retirement number, which is higher.
Right. So if I could respond to that, Vice Chair Polina.
Sure.
So Treasurer Pierce, I'm happy. We'll be happy to take a look at the numbers again. The ask last week was to find a ballpark for if the 810 people who don't go over 1,280 hours were afforded benefits on a prorated basis. The ask was kind of broad brushed, so we took a broad brushed approach at getting the answer. I've no doubt that a more refined and a more detailed approach will yield a different number, probably less. To your point regarding retirees, we do know that, and I say we know this because Harold just pinged me on the side here, but we've got 143 of those temporaries that are state employee retirees, to your point. So the universe would be less than 810, but right now we have no idea what the total universe would be. So we went with just the total number of temps.
Yeah.
I do want to, if I could, Amy also mentioned to me on the side here that one of the numbers she mentioned about benefits she would like to update as well. So if I could give her a chance to do that.
Sure. Go ahead, Amy.
Sorry about that. So you had asked me if the benefits, if part-time classified employees could get benefits. And if they work less than 20 hours, they cannot. So I just wanted to clarify for you. And there's only 4 people currently that work less than 20 hours a week that are classified.
Thank you. So Dan, is this something that, and Beth, I mean, is this something that you two could come up with better numbers for next time?
Yeah, I would be happy to work on the retirement number. And just, Dan, I got the number for the 1865 an hour from the page 73 of the fiscal year 20 workforce report. And again, I would be happy to sit down and look at that number. But and when you talk about the universe, it's not just state retirement, because you have teachers come back and municipal employees come back and work temps as well. So you'd have to, if we had the names of the 810 or 821, whatever that is, we could run them against our retirement numbers and see how many people are getting a retirement from all 3 systems, and each of those systems. That would reduce the universe even further. And then you would reduce the universe even further by the number of people that are just one-timers, and not coming back each year, getting to Vince's point. So I think the universe is considerably smaller. And again, if I take the 18.65, I get a different number, a lower number than the 4450. So I'd like to talk to Harold about how we got to that as well. But I can only do the retirement. We can help with identifying the retirees that are in the universe, but HR would have to do the rest of that universe. How many people are one-timers and out, and how many. So I think that those would be some of the factors. I'd be happy to sit and talk to Harold about what those are. But again, that's. We're not HR experts, and we don't have the database. We have the database on retirements.
Right. So Treasurer Pierce, I appreciate that. This is Dan. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I can't see anybody on this phone. So we can certainly get Harold and Amy together with somebody from your office, whoever that might be, and we can work on this over the next few days, weeks.
I think I just lost you. Okay.
Anthony, may I ask a question?
Sure. I think he lost his visuals. Now he's on his phone. Now he may have lost his phone.
Dan, you can hear us, can't you?
I can, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Beth. So Beth, it would be interesting not only to see who's in the retiree pool, but they may not get all the same. The benefits may not all be equal. So, for example, they might not have. I've lost it. It's gone dark. The thing, but I mean, they may not get all these benefits that we're talking about. They may not get, some of these benefits so it may not all be apples to apples.
Sure.
So there may be some benefits they'd like to get a la carte as a part-time worker.
Yeah. I think that you'd have to be careful about mandatory versus voluntary. How we define the eligibility, hours over time. Municipal system has an hourly eligibility, for instance, criteria, and taking out the retirees, because that would be adverse selection. You could be in, then you could be out, and in by circumstances, and that could cause adverse selection in the and impact the funding. So those are some of the considerations. The bottom line for me, and I know that you don't want to go into this testimony right now, but my bottom line is that everyone should have an opportunity for retirement, have an opportunity for financial well-being. And when people say to me, I don't have these benefits, why should the state employees, or why should the teachers, or why should the municipal? And what I say to them is that the bottom line for me is that it's raise all boats. It's not a race to the bottom. And for me, I think that that's something we should try to look at and see to the extent it is feasible. And take a look at the numbers. But I think the first thing is, what are the costs and what is the universe to be able to get to that?
Right.
So to Senator Polina's, we need more information.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm sorry, were you, Allison, did you want to say something?
No, I agree. I agree with you, Anthony. We need more information, but I think we're off to a good start.
And I think what's also good, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's interesting that the conversation is about how to go about doing it as opposed to whether or not we should do it. which is a nice starting place from my point of view, that we're not arguing about whether these people deserve benefits and deserve the ability to put food on the table and make a decent living. We're talking about how many of them are there and what might it cost us in order to make it happen. So I think that's good, assuming that's where we're at. So I would say then you folks collaborate on coming up with some other numbers. Damien will be ready to go through the bill with us just to get us focused a little bit on what we're talking about. And we can then look at the new set of numbers and see whether it's a question of supporting the temps more than when it comes to judiciary, supporting the temps or allowing them to hire more people, whichever works best for everybody. Okay,
So Anthony, can I just make a closing comment?
you may.
So I just want to make our position clear. We believe the law should automatically, without, involving legislators and HR and everybody else, we believe the law should recognize and thank people who have worked as temps for 2 years. Recognize their good efforts on behalf of the state with being converted to a classified position, whether it's full-time or part-time. And also we think that while those 2 years are being worked, they should be entitled to some basic benefits, just because it helps work productivity by encouraging them to stay. It doesn't require retraining. There's, dozens of arguments that you can make. And, and of course I noted that you don't want people showing up for work because they're sick and maybe infecting or causing others to then have to leave the workplace. So it's a great bill. Just introducing the bill appears to have made some remarkable strides in the right direction. And I thank you for your observation that if we can put this into statute, we can move on to other issues in subsequent years. Thank you.
Thank you. What you just said, what you just outlined is what's in the draft proposal that you sent us, or the previous proposal.
Yes, and I've sent it to all of you as well as to Damien.
Great.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we cut out? No. All right. Well, then thanks, everybody. I appreciate the willingness to go through all this number stuff as well and off the top of our heads. Look forward to having something on paper that we can actually work with. So I appreciate it. And we'll continue this conversation probably sometime next week, but I can't say that's up to the chair as to when it happens.